welcome to Night Shift here. Garrick Lopez alongside Kyle Nash, who is still not going after head coaching jobs in the NFL, so that's good. He's still with us on that. Yet. Bryson Turner, Nick Porcelli with us. Jeff is out. He's recovering from his voice. The UCF basketball historic victory over number 3 Kansas. Coming up later on the show, we're going to break down the historical win and what does it mean as it goes moving forward as UCF hosts BYU. Women's basketball, unfortunately, still searching for that elusive Big 12 win. Are we going to have a confrontation, Bryson and Kyle, over women's basketball? We'll find out shortly. That and much more coming up on this edition of Night Shift. You can sure you follow us on the YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up there. Of course, comments there, and as well as on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, X, you know it. And, of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com. It's your home for all coverage of UCF. But let's begin. There you go. Let's begin with some football, Kyle Nash. You got the chance to talk to KJ Jefferson, who had his official press conference.
Yes.
He's Gus Malzahn. Let's first start with that. We're going to hit 3 quick topics on football and then move over to basketball. Let's begin with KJ Jefferson. We spent a lot of time last episode about KJ, but you now got to talk to Gus and KJ. What was your big takeaway from it?
You know, it's funny. I asked Coach first off as he introduced KJ Jefferson to the microphone there. I asked him if all the stuff he's done, right? The way I questioned it there at the press conference today as we record this Thursday, January 11th, right? The main piece we were talking about was obviously a lot of stuff at the transfer portal. And listen, after listening to coach after coach after coach during bowl season here in Orlando, and then traveling over to the Gasparilla in Tampa, hearing every coach whine and complain about the transfer portal, here came Gus talking about its possible benefits and what he's been doing to move toward it. Basically reiterating that leaning into the transfer portal, all the stuff they've done, whether it's the QR codes on the jerseys, whether it's the Twitter handles on the jerseys, all that kind of stuff was building that foundation to swing the bat and get that big prospect. KJ Jefferson is that guy. I asked him about that, and he acknowledged, hey, listen, a whole lot of that is a big reason why that was here. And he also reiterated that his mom is in fact still on Facebook. For those that are curious there. Of course, you could check all that out, all that exchange and all those questions and such on Black and Gold Banneret's YouTube channel. Bing! But also spoke to KJ Jefferson as well. 2 key questions I asked him from the player perspective. What opportunity did he feel like he got as a transfer portal participant? Again, we hear all the old hats, the transfer portal is bad to ruin college football. But he brought that fresh perspective that it offered him a fresh start, an opportunity to get into an offense with a coach, by the way, who took a guy to be an NFL, we'll call him an NFL great. I don't think Cam Newton's a Hall of Famer, but he was certainly a guy that got to the Super Bowl, MVP candidacy at the very least, and was a big name in the league, and now is like a podcasting icon, right? KJ talked about being compared to Cam Newton throughout his youth as a quarterback. His size speaks for itself. Dude has big shoulders, to say the very least. I asked Coach Malzahn about durability after he talked about his physical tools, and without hesitation, yes, 100% durability is going to be something he feels better about with a guy with a little bit of thickness, not some baseball player or undersized sock hawker, an actual dude that looks kind of like that. And then, over and above that too, I asked KJ his philosophy about taking contact as a quarterback, and he says, "Yeah, I'm not afraid to do battle there." And I think this is the part that's key. Take what you will of this. This shows observational skills on KJ's part in one of 2 ways. A, he saw the film and was familiar with what UCF fans dealt with through the season, or he saw me ask Gus Malzahn the durability question. I asked him about contact. He's smart enough to wrap up with a question by going, but I want to be smart about it. I don't want to take unnecessary hits or put myself under unnecessary risk, but I am prepared to take the hit when it's time to do so. And if you want his exact words, like I said, you can check it out on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel.
That's pretty good. One last question for the three of you, and we're not going to go. I just want a quick ranking system in your opinion, and do you think this is realistic? Can KJ Jefferson be the best quarterback in the state of Florida for UCF? Where would you rank him among the four? Well, I don't even, if you want to count Miami, that is.
Well, I'll say this, Elo. There's an opportunity for KJ to be the best transfer portal candidate or prospect in program history at this point. I absolutely think that's on the table, right? With what he offers coming into this offense. Now, granted, Javon Baker is moving on to the NFL. Good luck. I think with all the tools, he said he's excited. He mentioning by name Kobe Hudson, RJ Harvey. Even he said Randy, as in I think he means Randy McMichael. That's interesting too. And just a lot of guys he's excited about being there. Also threw props to the offensive line of UCF. I don't know if that shots at the people over there in Sweet country or what. I don't think it is, but he was at the very least, like some of us on this panel, very happy with the offensive line.
Did you just try to do a woke pig suey?
Hey, listen, you're not going to get any better than that. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So you think he could be number one, better than Graham Mertz at Florida, better than DJU, and I'm not going to pronounce the last name, but Florida State's quarterback.
DJ Uyunglele. Yes.
Very good. Yes.
Right. Well done.
You would be the closest candidate, I think. Uyunglele is just, there's a consistency issue there. And honestly, I don't know that Florida has FSU at this point has the protection to handle it. They would have to bounce back, do some good things. You would know more about that turnover.
Well, let's see if they have a head coach. Mike Norvell's been rumored to be a candidate for the Alabama job. I think he'd be. Who knows?
Anybody's a candidate for that job now.
I hear.
Except Dan Lanning, who decided to announce on video,
I heard somebody even speculate Coach Freeman at Notre Dame has a low buyout and might get the job.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
All right. Notre Dame to Alabama, Notre Dame to SEC is out of the question, but is not out of the question. That's happened already. But Alabama, really?
All right. Well, listen.
We can't go down that rabbit hole.
This is not KnightShift. All right. We got other stuff to do. But
notice I avoided mentioning Dion going there with the Aflac connection.
The Aflac.
I'm so done with those commercials. I'm so done with those commercials.
Bryson, Nick, give me quick rankings. Just quick rankings so we can move on to the next topic.
He definitely has a shot to be number one. I agree with Kyle on that. But I'm going to say this. He ain't going to be last. I'm predicting Florida's guy to be last.
Graham Mertz, hating on Graham Mertz. All right, Bryson, you saw both Mertz and KJ in person.
Yes, I would say, by the way, Nick, I love the fact that you didn't even acknowledge Miami. It's like not Miami. It's like I won't even acknowledge you. But between the big three QBs of Mertz, Uyunglele, and Jefferson, I am going to say KJ. I think is just a scooch better than DJ. I think you are right. Mertz is the lower one of the lower one. But with that said, Mertz is still an experienced quarterback. He had 4 years at Wisconsin before this. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. But I think from a pure talent perspective, I think KJ is easily number one. Yeah. But experience, of course, is going to help.
Entertaining. How about that? It's entertaining to watch.
Yeah. Brandon Wimbush had 4 years at Notre Dame too, and then was nothing here. But
I agree with Yeah.
Real quick, the only reason why Nick is hating on Mertz is because he's trying to throw some shields at his boy Kyle Trask there in Tampa. That's all that is.
I agree with the three of you. I think DJ. I actually have KJ ahead of DJ. Although I do think both quarterbacks are at the right place. Like I think DJ's a good fit. I don't think DJ would have been a good fit here. I think he's a good fit at FSU, vice versa. So there's that. So we'll see. All right,
KJ versus DJ.
So we'll worry about Mertz versus KJ in October 5th when UCF plays Florida. All right, two more notes of note football-wise. Javon Baker goes to the declares for the NFL draft, and then Ricky Barber officially announces he's coming back. I don't think either is surprised. Kyle, I think you and I were more surprised that he even announced he was coming back. I thought that was kind of weird and whatever. Which one do you want to tackle first, Kyle? Which one's more significant of those two items there?
I mean, more significant is Barber for my money, because with KJ coming in, listen, at the end of the day, I see Xavier Townsend getting an opportunity to be a big part of this offense in Javon's stead, being a guy who can do more in his tool belt than maybe Javon's a little bit better receiver, but I think you could do more in the playbook with Xavier Townsend. It should be interesting to see with another year of experience on his belt playing receiver. Javon, listen, I'm going to say it here. I'm not going to go so bold to say that look out for him starting on March 30th with the UFL. I'm not going to go after him that bad, but I don't see him being drafted, and he's a third-day guy at best. I don't see what
even if he has a good combine, like if he surprises people or something like that. I mean, you know how they love those combines, and he runs a big 40.
Listen, and hey, Trey Nixon and Jacob Harris are both examples of guys that did end up getting into the draft on the strength of that. Jacob Harris too, being a second-day draftee, if I remember correctly. Of course, now he's last I heard he was on the Jags practice squad. If he's even still on that, I haven't checked lately. I don't think he is. But yeah, for my money, if Javon was really trying to craft his game for the NFL, in my opinion, he needs another year at school to really work all that out. I'm never going to fault the kid for going for the money. I hope he gets it. I'm no scout, but I don't think he's got those tools. Like, think of the UCF guys that have made impacts. They're bigger, they're taller, they're more consistent, and they're a lot quieter. So, I mean, for my money, he has all of the he has a few extra, I'm not going to call them red flags, but he's more of a personality than a Gabe Davis, for example, a Traquan Smith, that kind of a guy, a Jordan Akins. And I don't think he's got the same physical tools that those guys have either.
I tend to agree with, I agree with everything you said there. I think this is good news for Kobe Hudson. It's a chance for him to have a breakout year. Xavier Townsend get more touches. I think that's exciting. And I'm excited, Kai, believe it or not, about in spring. What about some of these younger receivers like the Trent Whittemores and some of maybe the transfers they're getting in? Who's, competition for that number 3, number 4 wideout, I think will be exciting.
Goldie Lawrence.
Goldie Lawrence, who's coming over. So I agree with you. I think the Ricky Barber news is bigger news because that's a defensive presence inside there. I think with respect to Javon, had a nice 2 years here, but I think it's, receivers should be one of the easier positions to replace. And we'll see about the NFL draft thing. I don't know what to make out of that. You follow that a lot closer than I do. Yeah. And that, so we'll see.
I got people for that, Eric Lopez. If I was covering it that close, I would have covered the Hula Bowl. But that's another question.
All right, I'm not even getting it.
Hey, real quickly, though, before we move on, I know, Kyle, you were asking about Jacob Harris. If you guys want to learn about where he's at right now, then in a few days, check out blackandgoldbanneret.com to see our NFL recap article, where you can also see who's playing in the playoffs from UCF.
Bing! Quick addition to, you mentioned the spring, something in particular that KJ said was a goal of his here at UCF. Looking better as a passer. So, another one of these guys that's a great athlete, but is getting the flack about his pass game for people who basically see anyone athletic and then just assume they can't throw the football. And I, too, am curious to see what Darren Hinshaw can do with a guy that has 36 starts compared to John Rice Plumlee trying to make the full conversion from baseball athlete to quarterback.
And have a good offensive line, too. Let's not forget Arkansas's offensive line. I mean, I think that one could make anyone look like a bad passer.
KJ took the time to give props to UCF's guys, that should say.
Safe to say, Kyle, that over here at UCF, KJ Jefferson will have a helping hand.
I see.
If that doesn't prove I've worked too much with Kyle, I don't know what.
I was about to say, resistance is futile, Eric Lopez. Assimilation is complete. Shall we move on?
Yes, let's move on to, obviously, and that's your football. We'll keep you updated on football, obviously, as news develops. But the big story, obviously, still fresh in everybody's mind on Wednesday night, UCF men's basketball in front of the third largest crowd in the history of the arena. Second sellout. I know some people are confused about that. They don't have as many seats now as they did, say, back in 2017 when there was 10,000. You could get 10,000 seats. Now it's about 94, 69, 90, 500, close to that, because they've added these extra. I don't know how you want to describe it, Kyle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rich people seats.
Now, Kyle, you and Brian Murphy are the only two people I know that were not at the basketball game in person.
Hey, listen, I wasn't the one claiming they'd go and then didn't show up. Like, listen, first of all, let's start with that. Like, I knew my role. I know that Nick Porcelli's house is men's basketball, and that you, Eric Lopez, being the college basketball connoisseur that you are. Listen, my place was in the van, okay, where I helped uploaded the episode of the reaction episode of the Night Shift. They're on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel. Bing! I am a team player, if nothing else, Eric Lopez.
And because of your help, I'm going to give you go ahead and kick things off. Give me your thoughts on the game, and then you ask us your questions that you're curious about, because we have not heard your thoughts. Obviously, for those if you watch on the YouTube channel, you hear mine and Nick's thoughts on that. You'll hear from Bryson's in a moment, but I want to hear your thoughts as you watched the game, so you had a different perspective. You were able to watch it from a telecast standpoint. Yeah,
I mean, well, first of all, listen, make sure you look for Nick's article, as we mentioned, on the blackandgoldbanneret.com. Bing! So from my perspective, the two things that I want to take away is, first of all, I do want to flex my ego as the one who's secondary here on men's basketball. I tried to tell you all about Ibrahim Diamlo, but nobody would. I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen. That dude attends the block party. That dude throws the block party, and this dude drops a fadeaway on an All-American. And all the dang commentators can say is, "Oh, he doesn't usually make that shot. Oh, I don't believe he made that shot. It's 3 plays later. I don't believe he made that shot." Listen, guys, and by the way, I know that's the second half. The first half didn't go quite that well in comparison. I'm aware of that. But all I'm saying is not so much that we know whether he can hit that shot on the regular, gentleman. He's just not normally asked to do that. Listen, as somebody who in my basketball days in high school, I could hit shots. I just wasn't asked to do it. So when you're forced into a position by an All-American who, pretty talented guy, taking nothing from him, you pull some more things out of the toolkit that you don't normally do because you're not asked to, or rather opponents haven't forced you to yet. Diallo had a great night, probably a career night. Sure, not denying that. But can we give this dude some flowers? I'm just saying.
No, I agree. Oh, Bryson wants to argue with here, Kyle.
I want to dispute the fact that I have been on the Ibrahim Diallo train for a while because he came in leading the league in blocks.
Yeah, this wasn't directed at you necessarily, Bryson. And I'm going back.
It's directed at them.
Yes, them. The ones who think Johnny Dawkins should be fired. But I digress.
And I'm now maybe tweeting the gif of his celebration.
A couple things about Ibrahim, because I got a chance to talk to him in the post game and asked him about it. And obviously, I filled in earlier this year in a basketball game.
Such a fun guy. Yes.
Much more confident. He's a much more confident. He admits that, because I asked him about the confidence. He's a lot more confident. That's why they're going to him. He was timid earlier in the season.
You're right.
And part of the reason was he didn't trust himself as far as going to the free throw line, because he was struggling from the free throw line. And you know this, if you follow basketball, think of a Shaquille O'Neal types. When guys are not struggle from the free throw line, sometimes they're like, hey, I don't want the ball because I'm going to get fouled and I don't want to go to the line. And I think he struggled with that early. Give credit to the UCF staff. They've been working with him. And he says he's playing with a lot more confidence now. And I think you saw that as a result, because they went to him late in the game, to your point, offensively, which I didn't expect. The defense, I knew. He shut down Hunter Dickinson, who is probably the second best big man in college basketball, behind the young big man from Purdue, Edey. That was impressive what they did. But he's a big fight. And Bill Self, I asked Bill Self in the postgame, the Kansas head coach, Hall of Famer, and he said, yeah, Diallo and CJ Walker were big impact guys and disruptors. Walker had 3 blocks. Diallo altered shot. UCF has the size to compete in the Big 12. I think that's clear. They have the depth, the strength and numbers, as Coach Dawkins is talking about. Nick, you've been around the program. That's been a big thing about the deal. And I wrote about it, and you heard Coach Dawkins say in the postgame, they may not have the most talented starting 5. They may not have the best top 6, 7 rotation over teams like Kansas. But what they're counting on is that their 6 to 11 is better than most teams in the Big 12, and they can wear down Kansas. And that's what happened, Nick and Kyle and Bryson. They wore down Kansas as the game went on with some great coaching from Dawkins playing zone, much more zone, which Kansas, I only seen 30 possessions this year of zone. They were not prepared for that zone defense. And then one of the things Dawkins likes to do is he'll play zone, and then when the shot clock's at 10 seconds, he'll switch it up to man-to-man quickly to just mess with your heads. And it messed up Kansas completely.
I mean, but fire Dawkins.
Yeah, exactly.
I would also like to point out that this was Diallo's and Walker's first starts of the entire season to this point.
Right.
I don't know if,
Together.
No, period. Like I'm looking at Ibrahim Diallo right now. 14 games played, one start. That one start was last night.
All right.
I don't know if Dawkins was like, Diallo was almost like kind of like his ace in the hole, and he only whipped him out now, but he absolutely took that to perfection. And that block that he made, I think if you had to look for a play of the game in that one, his block with 50 seconds to go to set up Jalen Sellers' layup that put the game out of reach, basically, with less than a minute to go, I think that might be a very big contender for play of the year in a whole game worth of plays of the year, like all over the place.
Throwing up a banny on this one. I'm not mad at you, Bryson. That's a from you.
Yeah.
By the way, maybe even possibly, I know he was only 50% overall in field goals, gentlemen, but as a scoring presence, I would argue this is certainly Darius Johnson's most significant role as well. Nice that he has 6 assists as well. I mean, of course, that's his job, but like I saw him throw some significant splashes from 3 lanes.
Oh, no, 100% agree. Think back to the 3-pointer he made to go up 55-53. I asked Darius about that in the post. Darius Johnson, Jalen Sellers, Nick combined for what? 35 points. I think we've learned
17 right? Darius, 18 Jalen.
Yeah, so, 35. Yeah. So they scored 35. They only had 18 against Kansas State. What we've learned here, Nick, that backcourt has to produce offensively, and they have to be good. They struggled against Kansas State, and I think that's why the game got out of hand. They didn't struggle. They made big plays. You have to get plays out of your backcourt. Darius still turned the ball over a bit too much. Still want to tone that down, but they got to be productive to have a shot here moving forward in the Big 12.
And Darius was, in charge also. Like, let's give him – you were mentioning it. Let's give him credit. I think his biggest role was just the fact that he was able to kill off so much of Kansas' momentum, like you mentioned with that 3. Like, I think when Kansas was going on a run, we were worried it was going to go out, like they were going to run away with it. Nope, hits that 3, kills the momentum. And then later, the more important thing is he gets fouled. And, we know how UCF has been at the free throw line. Pretty iffy. He calmly hits those 2 free throws, puts us up by 2 scores. And that's when all the fans start heading down, getting ready to storm the court.
Yeah,
come on. Like, listen, we can talk about stats all day, but like, we just beat Kansas. Like, I want to say that. Like, first of all, I've heard a lot of people say Kansas lost. No, UCF beat them. They came out in that second half, and they were the better team. And ladies and gentlemen, we just knocked off the number 3 team in the country, one of the most famous college basketball programs of all time. So, gentlemen, my fellow Knight fans, how are you feeling right now?
I have now been a part of 2 facility stormings in the span of 365 days. I did not have that on my bingo card for this academic year.
These stormings. I like the way you did that, Bryson. Listen, and we could throw stats out the window all you want, Nick, but I think something here that we haven't thrown enough at are the defensive stats. Listen, I know that Elo criticized DJ's turnovers, and rightly so. 13 is obviously not ideal. I know that Dawkins is on record saying he wants that out of double digits.
Yeah, DJ had 7 of those. The team had 13, which is actually not a bad number for the team.
Right. Yeah.
DJ's, yeah,
you're absolutely right. Yeah, and 7 is certainly too many for the point guard. Thank you for polishing that, Elo. You're totally right. But 8 steals and 7 blocks. Great googly moogly. That is how you slow teams down. And then to Elo's point, when the backcourt does their job to get the points, you have what is the recipe for success with Dawkins here in the Big 12. I think it comes down to defense handling the business first and keeping games from getting low scoring. Obviously, you saw that here.
You saw the free throw line battle go over pretty well too. UCF was able to get to the line a good bunch that helped them through the way. And by the way, looking at defensively, what's lost in all of this, and I think we have to make sure we come up with this, because I remember when this happened, I was really worried that the game was going to get out of hand. Diarno Sila was ejected midway through the first half.
Yeah.
I mean, considering he was down a big man and they were able to do what they were able to do is absolutely astounding. And
But
also the officiating was just...
But listen, UCF won the free throw battle over Kansas, which is not easy to do. They won the 3-point line over Kansas. It was pretty impressive. They were down 16 late in the first half. It didn't look good. But they made a run at the half, before the half, to cut it down to single digits to 8. And Bill Self and Johnny Dawkins both said in the postgame that really decided the game, because, if Kansas puts that lead up to 20, it's probably all she wrote.
Yeah.
But because UCF cut it to single digits, they got some momentum and they carried it over into the second half, where they held Kansas to 31% shooting after Kansas shot 68%. I remember Nick showed me the box score. I was sitting next to him. He showed me the box score about 60. I'm like, is that right? Is that updated? And he said, yes. I'm like, wow. But it actually felt good because they were only down 8 against a team that was shot 68% from the field in the first.
Yes. No.
When you say I showed you the box score, do you mean when it finally let up because the students crashed the Wi-Fi because there were so many people in that stadium?
Here we go. So, yes, there's some – there we go.
Oh man, yeah. Let's talk about the environment now, because there's so many, just even off the court, there are so many moments tonight that we got to talk about. So start with the internet.
It's still not good.
They crashed the Wi-Fi. You made it hard to do my job, Night Nation.
Gosh, well, why?
That was awesome.
Scrap me tweeting from the student section.
Yeah, thank you for that.
It was an audible. Kyle, he was fuming. I thought he was going to just explode. That's why I was texting you, Kyle. Like, Kyle, can you have some links ready to go? Because I don't know what we're going to be able to do here. Yeah. And somehow magically it worked at the end.
People leaving is probably what it was.
Listen, I don't want to be negative, because you know what? That was the greatest crowd I ever saw in that arena. I have never heard noise like that before in my life. Just like this morning when I was just checking some videos I had, and I had to turn my headphones down because it was so loud in those videos.
What was it like on the telecast, Kyle?
Yeah, what was that like? I want to know that.
It stood. I heard the press corps talking. Today at the KJ Jefferson presser. Obviously, the topic of conversation. Heck, Malzahn even brought up that and Nick Saban's retirement in the preamble. But when they were talking about the ratio of Kansas fans to UCF fans, and whatever numbers they were dropping for that, it sure didn't sound like it. Because while I've heard, let's just say, more pessimistic elements of the press public claim things like, it was a 30-70 split in favor of Kansas for the fanhood there.
No, not at all. No, it was 70-30 UCF. It was 7, yeah.
Look, Kansas had a good contingent there. Don't get me wrong, but yeah.
But at day's end, listen, hearing UCF over the TV at a basketball game is a new experience for me. I'll tell you what.
Bryson, I need you to answer me this in the student section. What was up with the palm leaves? Why do students have palm leaves?
I can speak to that, actually.
Is it true that what happened was after the storm we just had, people just picked up palm leaves and walked into the arena? Is that not true?
That is as the legend goes, and a new tradition
is the Hula Bowl.
This is how you try to make a tradition happen, because it doesn't. The thing is, it does not feel forced. This feels Florida. And
okay, well, first of all, Kyle was going to try to say what actually happened. Why were students holding that?
So there was, and I haven't met the gentleman in question, so I don't know his name, but I overheard them talking with some of the press people at KJ Jefferson thing. We talked about the.
Who was there, by the way? KJ was at the game.
Yes.
Everybody was at the game except Kyle and Brian Murphy.
I love it.
There was NBA players. Everybody was.
Would you prefer I poll rank and have gone instead of Nick? Because I didn't.
Kyle, you missed. By the way, they had steak for the media meal. Steak.
Really?
Potatoes.
Yeah.
Okay. We keep interrupting.
I digress.
Story about the Palms.
The concept was they were looking as, listen, when it comes to marketeering and that sort of thing, UCF has proven time and again that they're a program that's pretty good at that. Kind of why they're in the Power 5 now, the Big 12 now, and gone so far for such a young institution is because they've leaned into that. And there was some sort of a meeting going on that they were trying to get something extra, something different, something unique for free throw distraction. Everybody has the balloons and the, well, somebody throws out and it's, I forget the name, but somebody threw out in the meeting in question, hey, what about palm fronds? And I was told, the way I heard it was the meeting went on, but from that moment on, palm fronds were the thing. So this is something that was hashed up behind the scenes in the offices there to be brought to the court for this purpose, for free throw distraction.
Well, I mean, it worked. It's popular. I was on campus today. All the students are talking about it.
My campus free throw line. Of course it worked. Yeah.
Here's the fraud.
It's popular with students now. And not to mention, I swear to God, if you go to UCF's Instagram page, both basketball and just UCF Knights in general, what's the emoji next to their name? A freaking palm tree.
Hashtag fear the frond. I've also seen that.
Yeah, that's trending. It was trending in UCF Twitter.
This may have been cooked up in the office space of the Roth Athletic Center at Kyle Nash, but the way that it ended up working out, because even if that was how it worked, the story behind it, because behind it, you can easily believe that someone just picked up some palm fronds and took them into the game. I remember there's this one episode of a TV show I watched where a character was telling a false story about his mom, and it's and at the end it was that's a good story about my mom. It's not true, but it's a good story. And
so you're saying that in the future, if we still do this, it's going to be the Mandela effect, where we think that students just walked in with palms one day.
Well, it's the lore. I think that's one thing that sometimes these things do, is that this is how you create lore, because if you are going to create something as a university marketing system, you got to make it feel like this is something someone would come up with. And honestly, also, I think it could be replicable as well, because you could say, hey, I can pick up a palm frond and wave it around and distract people, and it also feels very Florida. Only UCF can do this type of thing in the Big 12. And it's the first time I've actually seen, because remember in the recruiting photos when we would see all those beach aesthetics and that tropicalness to it, that's great visual aesthetic, but I don't think we've ever had something this tangible that also fit that kind of aesthetic. Yeah. And this is the first time I feel like we've seen that type of aesthetic of this Big 12 era in tangible form with palm fronds, and people seem to love it because it shows our Floridian identity to the Big 12. And I got to imagine students had fun waving around palm fronds and palm frond, tropical related merchandise to distract the Jayhawks, which worked. It worked.
And hopefully it gets students to come back for the next game and the next game after that, because there's still lots of home games, including this Saturday against BYU. But let's get over. I want to get a couple more topics real quick before we move on, because BYU is a big game. We got to get into it Saturday. But Johnny Dawkins said best win of his since he's been here at UCF, which I concur. 100%. I personally think it's, and I'm writing a column about it, and it may be out by the time this comes out, etc.
Hey, but where would they find that column, Eric Lopez?
blackandgoldbanneret.com. It's the biggest basketball win ever at UCF. And I make there's some, obviously prior to this, the Houston game in 2019 in Houston when College Game Day was big, because I thought that got UCF at large bid locked up for the NCAA. Our friend Brian Murphy, actually, him and I would argue, because he felt the Cincinnati home game that year on senior night was locked up the bid, and that was a big win. Top 25 matchup storming the court, by the way. There's the Illinois win in 2017, the Elite Eight, which was about as loud as it was last the Kansas game on Wednesday night. That's right up there. Some of the older fans would remember the Connecticut game from the Bahamas when Connecticut was ranked number 4, which was the previous highest ranked team that UCF basketball has beaten. They beat Florida one year at Amway in 2010 with Marcus Jordan. Obviously, you have the NCAA tournament win against VCU. But this is the biggest win, because 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 40 years from now, you're going to remember this game, whether you watched it on Plus or where you were in attendance. Whereas some of those games I just mentioned is going to be like, I don't remember this. But there's always going to be that first Big 12 win, and it's freaking Kansas. Yeah. Kansas.
Let's think back to that previous podcast that we had about that, by the way, because I think it was the last show or the one before that, we were talking about the first Big 12 win. None of us thought it was going to be Kansas.
I was the closest to getting it right. Just want to point that out there.
Well, technically, I was too. I had BYU.
I was one word off. I said Kansas State. I actually meant to say Kansas.
But this was because Kyle, remember you and I kind of went back and forth on the night shift when UCF beat Cincinnati, and I've kind of mocked it by saying that ain't a real Big 12 win. That's Cincinnati. Right? But there's like no debate. This is the blue blood. This is
the team of the Big 12. Team.
And how bizarre, by the way. Mm-hmm. If I would have told you guys in August that Kansas would blow out UCF in one sport and UCF would beat Kansas in the other sport, what would you have said?
Yeah,
it happened. I can tell you that.
You would have said, "Oh, yeah, good. UCF beat them in football, and we got blown out in basketball." No, not at all. It was the complete opposite.
If you brought that to me, I would have established an HR department here at the Black and Gold Banneret and had you tested.
I mean, the insanity of the entire atmosphere was nuts. We storming another facility, and another meme of the night ended up being born, where UCF alum Michael O'Donnell on the ESPN scoring table had a shoe thrown at him, which he apparently still has.
I saw it on Twitter, yeah.
Kyle, you watched the telecast. Like, what was your reaction when you first saw that?
I didn't watch that portion of it with a shoe ending up involved. Yeah, that part I didn't catch, I'm afraid. But
all right. That made
I got a question for you guys. We said this during night shift. You were kind of getting into it earlier, Elo. And I put this up on Twitter earlier today on the Black and Gold Banner Twitter account, Bing. Is this the biggest win in UCF history, at least as far as the regular season, regardless of sport and history? Is this the biggest one?
I want to hear Kyle's take, because Kyle's been in all UCF. I want to hear all your. I'll go last in this. I'm curious what you all think on this.
I know it's
you're saying, and I think it's fair to. So you're saying regular season. We're going to not count.
If you want to say ever, fine, but let's start with regular season.
I'll give you some wiggle room there, but go ahead, Kyle.
If you say ever, and I mean this respectfully,
I don't think it's ever, because I know there's been bigger postseason games, but regular season, I'm going to die on that hill.
The Auburn bowl game in
Peach
the
Bowl,
obviously you don't have the Kansas win without that one. So
that's I think that is the biggest win, like, regardless. But in terms of regular season win, I'm gonna say, and when I say regular season, conference championships also don't count.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to say it's this. I'm dying on that hill.
In any sport, you're saying?
Any sport.
And how are you defining big precisely, as far as impressive, upsetting? Are you talking about impact for the program? Because here's the thing, Nick, and I'll throw the NFL draft prospect defense, right? We don't have that answer today. We don't know how much this is going to impact things moving forward. I could technically, just on clout, throw the Cincinnati game day win in football for now, at the very least, because we're still hearing NFL guys now talk about their college days. Desmond Ridder in particular, he's somehow was an NFL starting quarterback, whole other question. Talk about even more than Nippert. He was asked about what stadium other than Nippert was the toughest to play in, and without hesitation, game day, that particular day, was an atmosphere that had not been rivaled in his mind to that point. And that mystique was created. Even Kirk Herbstreit for 30 seconds stopped hating on G5 programs because he was that impressed by what he had experienced calling the game in the bounce house. So, now,
so you're going to say that one, huh?
Oh, I'm not prepared to say that necessarily. I'm saying that's why this is hard to do this evaluation. We don't have enough to know the impact yet. I'll meet you here. It is clearly, in my mind, the top basketball win.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. If you say anything else, you're stupid.
Well,
regular season.
Okay, that was harsh, but you know
Regular
what I'm trying to
season.
say.
We gotta make sure we clarify that.
By the way, can I just give you credit for not saying the USF football game from 2017? Because every time I bring this topic up, that's the one I keep hearing. So I'm actually glad it's something new.
Yeah.
I mean, that's legit. Wait, I'm going to defend that because that's the best
That's fair.
football game. That's the best football game I've ever seen played on that stadium. And with the stakes that there were, can you imagine? I mean, if they lose that game to South Florida, who knows where UCF is right now? We might be having we might be talking about South Florida playing in the Big 12 instead of UCF. So I will defend that UCF USF game. That's one of the greatest of. I mean, that's right up there. I would probably give it a slight edge over Kansas because, again, with the stakes. And look, we are a football school, and that propelled them to get to the conference championship game to beat Memphis to eventually get to the
Auburn. Here's what I'll say: I've seen someone say that's the most meaningful game, but they still think that the Kansas one is the biggest, and I think that might be my way of looking at it because at the end of the day. Yes, it probably had the most meaningful. We don't, and like you said, Kyle, we don't know what this win is going to do for this program. But here's the arguments for this being the biggest win in history. Is Cincinnati on game day Kansas? No. Is USF Kansas? No. None of them had the prestige that this opponent has. And also none of them have the history that this has. This is our first Big 12 win.
Right. Well, it's the first Big 12 game too.
We can't ever say that. And none of them had have the memory of
the only
crowd
thing
rushing the court.
that could have satisfied those particulars would be if Kyle Israel doesn't fumble the ball against Texas, opening the bounce house. And I'm not talking trash on Kyle Israel. I'm just talking about how close game is. I've met Kyle Israel. I almost played ball with him with the Rage. Whole other question. Punchline's this though, and I'll jump right to you here, Bryson. The only thing that can kill those statements is the foundation argument, and that is what they're throwing at you with that USF game. And I'll leave it at that.
I will argue this. I think that this game. I think actually is a little bit similar to the Peach Bowl in this way. UCF slaying a college sport blue blood because Auburn football is a blue blood SEC, school. Kansas is a blue blood basketball school. And we talk about how that Peach Bowl win, when you include postseason games in there, is probably the biggest win in UCF history, or at least in the argument.
It's the greatest opponent you've ever beaten. That's what I'm going to say.
Well, Kansas we did that same thing against Kansas on our home court, by the way.
Well, Auburn's not a blue blood in football. They're not. The one across town is Alabama. But I see wrong.
Bye, Nick Saban.
I will say this. Interesting argument that Nick makes, and I kind of can't disagree with this point of view. Kyle, I can't remember what is UCF's football biggest brand win in football on campus. I mean, you could argue that Alabama, for example, if you include road games, Alabama, they did beat Alabama in 2000, but that was a bad Alabama.
UCF created the Alabama monster, or at least was part of it. I think it was the next week or 2 weeks later that the coach
got fired. Yeah.
And here comes.
But that was a 3-9 Bama team. That was a big disappointment.
Right.
If Florida had a better record in Gasparilla, that would be up there, but they were 6-10.
Yeah.
I think Nick is right. I will agree with Nick because I stayed up till 4:30 in the morning thinking about this question that Nick asked because he had to ask the question. So I was doing this while I was editing audio for a mutual company that me and Kyle worked to covering the Orlando sports scene.
I was hoping.
What about Louisville 2013?
I don't think that's as big of a brand as Kansas, to Nick's argument. Again, that's a significant win. I'm sure football fans will say that's a bigger win.
It's on the top 10.
And they'll say that's a bigger win than Kansas. The argument you're going to get, Nick, is that this was January, not March. But I do like your perspective that this is probably the biggest brand that UCF has beaten in any sport, or at least on campus.
On campus.
More than football. Because football's biggest brand win might have been Oklahoma State at home to this point.
And Oklahoma State's good. But do they have the level of respect in college football that Kansas has in college basketball?
It should have been Oklahoma this year, but
that would have counted if it was
about that moment, man. I don't want to think about that anymore.
Spurrier, South Carolina, had they held on and not blown the lead in the second half, that could have been interesting because of the Spurrier factor.
Are we going over heartbreaking losses? Let's talk about the good stuff.
Well, let me just throw another couple because on campus. Let's talk about on-campus UCF sporting events. I think Kyle makes a great point about game day. That you cannot dismiss. That is an event.
Yes.
It is a monster event. And if you include that with the package with the Cincinnati game, that is up there as one of the great events on campus ever. Nobody ever thought we'd host game day. We would have hosted
as much on this podcast. It was the best event UCF hosted in football.
But do you actually remember anything from the game besides maybe the
fact that it was the loudest that stadium was?
That, like the delay of game.
How the game changed when Cortez Broughton got hurt, an NFL caliber defensive end, by the way.
Let me rephrase that because we're hardcore UCF fans. Of course, we're going to know this. If we went up to a casual UCF fan, do you think they would remember any of that stuff from the game?
What do you mean, like the?
Well, they'll remember game day, and they might remember the opening.
Remember game day, but from the actual Cincinnati game, do you think they'd remember?
Like I think they remember the open, how loud it was. It was an ABC.
Maybe that.
And the reason why they won't remember it as much, Nick, is because the game wasn't close. Like UCF ended up clobbering.
Yeah, that also might be. I think that's why this was a competitive game. Like UCF, won by a pretty decent margin,
but still pretty significant because it was UCF on primetime ABC. We cannot underestimate that the exposure the university got. So that would have to be. And I'm not going to rank them because I think this is very subjective. If it really depends what you like. If you're a football fan, you're going to side
100%.
Right? You're going to side with football, basketball. Your argument about the brand is pretty significant. I'm going to throw out some other major events on campus. The USF game has to be thrown there. Obviously, the two conference championship games, 17 and 18.
That's more postseason, though. I wouldn't count that.
No, but I'm just talking about on-campus major events that have taken place on campus. All right? Because, the hoopla with the 18 Memphis game, you were there, Kyle. That's significant coming from behind with Mac, all that. Even the 17 game with Memphis with the Frost storyline, the Neal interception. Historic events.
Poor Mike Norvell. I'm glad he's got some karma breaking his way. That's all I can say.
Yeah, sure he does.
The Illinois Elite 8 win. There's in the NIT that win.
That's a great event, but I do agree with Nick. I think Kansas passes that because it's Kansas. That's the thing. Like Illinois, there's people that don't like the NIT. We found that out last year with the criticism. Jesus. But I love I was there at Illinois. To me, the Illinois game was as loud as the Kansas game was, but I would probably rank the Kansas game right now because it's Kansas.
It's Kansas.
Okay. How about the softball regional?
Wait. I was going to ask you about stickball, but we can't act like Michigan didn't happen 2 years ago too. Like
the men's basketball game, that was great. The uniqueness of that was a weird game for a lot of reasons, as we've documented. That was a weird game where UCF just became the Golden State Warriors.
Right, as a member of the Black and Gold Banneret, I'll tell you.
Plus the crowd, remember that was there was only a percentage of people allowed to go to the game, and then it was a very pro-Michigan crowd.
Yes.
Which is why there was a lot of concern about whether Kansas would have a pro-Kansas crowd for this game, where UCF fans sell their tickets. That didn't happen.
No.
Whereas in the Michigan game, it did. What I would point out is part of the reason why Michigan had such a big crowd was that was in December before they went down to the Orange Bowl to play in this playoff game. So I think a lot of Michigan fans went to Orlando on the break to watch the basketball team and then drive down to the Orange Bowl a couple days later to watch the team play in the playoff. I think there were a lot of Michigan people that did the double dip, but that's a very underrated win. In that regard, the thing that hurts it is obviously that UCF team didn't fulfill that potential from that game. Plus, Michigan was not ranked number 3 in the country.
Oh, right. Yeah. Football brand, not a basketball brand too, but they had to be brought up as big.
No, that's a fair one. That's a great one.
The only players left, by the way, on that team that are still here, that 2021 team that beat Michigan, CJ Walker and Darius Johnson are the only players that played on the court in that game that are still here. Johnny Dawkins turning it around. I need to stick another one to the Fire Dawkins crowd. I had to.
And I love it. A freshman.
Listen, you want to slip something to the Fire Dawkins crowd? How about you go to our YouTube page, watch the Bill Self post game where he says, "Hey UCF, you're lucky to have this guy as your head coach. He brings class to this team."
Bing!
Fire that guy. One of the greatest head coaches in college basketball history just said, "You're lucky to have him."
Yeah,
And anyway,
Well, I mean, it's funny. We got comments from people that sent comments to our Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel and our Facebook page. Luzio Rodriguez, shout out. Last year, fan base was calling for Coach Dawkins' job. Maybe now the 2 or 3 top 10 wins quote will change those people's minds. Ha ha. Those people don't get it. Go Knights. Thomas Sternum writes, Bill Self's post-game presser was really, really great. Underrated benefit of this conference is playing against some great coaches that speak with poise, intelligence, and kindness. I'm so excited to meet more away programs. That was the other thing. I think there's been a very good synergy about these fan bases getting to know each other. Kansas fan, things that in football, and it's translated to basketball.
And listen, the coaches that have come here, whether it's men or women's basketball, are stoked to be here. They all at least voice excitement about the program being here. Obviously, that's part of the job, but the fact that you can ask them what it is you like, and they're like, boom, 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 and it isn't just coach speak. There's something to be said there.
So I think, Nick, to answer your question, I think it's in the top 5, top 10 UCF on-campus events ever.
Softball regional, is that up there?
Yes, absolutely. It has to be up there. I think it's the number one. Again, it's apples and oranges. Postseason versus a regular season game.
To rank softball lower. Interesting.
Yeah, that'd tell you a butt ton, shouldn't it, Nick?
How many regionals does other teams win? How many regionals has baseball won recently? No.
I mean, the Sultan is blessing your argument, buddy.
Well, by the way, I'll tell you the full story. They beat Michigan, which is a brand in softball, and their legendary head coach, that was her last game, as it turns out. She retired the following fall. She was the all-time winningest head coach in college softball history. So there is some significant history about that, not to mention UCF winning a regional. I would rank that ahead because, again, the basketball is general. But, again, I think they're right there. I think that's top 5, all that we just talked about. Yeah. That's some top 5 stuff on campus there. There is one other event later this year in the spring, if it were to happen, that could match this UCF Kansas game. You know what it is?
Oklahoma.
Bingo, Bryson.
Oklahoma softball, yeah.
Well, I think we need to move on from this conversation, but
no, that was fun. No, I really enjoyed it. That was good. That was good. Some good take.
Here's how I want to end it. Then let's give our. Where does this Kansas win rank all time? Give me your number.
Oh, well, number 1 basketball. I'm going to say top 5. Top 10 all-time athletics, if you include postseason and road games, probably top 5 on campus.
I'm going to say it is in the Mount Rushmore of on-campus regular season events. If you want to go on campus and regular season, it's in the Mount Rushmore. I think if you are talking about on campus, just on campus, I think it's probably top. I'm going to say it's top 10 easily. Where it is in the top 10, I would put it somewhere in maybe like the 5, 6, 7 range. Then overall period, I think it's definitely in the top 20. It's going to be if you did a top 25 ranking, I think it's going to be in the top 25, just overall period.
Nick, can you pose the question again? My fence-sitting compatriots here have confused me a bit on what I'm supposed to actually answer here.
Oh, jeez.
Just where does this Kansas game rank for you all time? And you can also add regular season.
I am not going to hide behind that. Where does the Kansas win rank all-time program stuff? Now, granted, obviously, I have a football leaning. I'm not putting it ahead of the Peach Bowl. I'm not putting it ahead of Game Day. I'm not putting it ahead of
Cincinnati.
That was Game Day. 2017.
Sorry, Mr. USF. Excuse me.
I'm not putting it ahead of USF. Thank you, and I'm not putting it ahead of Memphis for the conference in 17, the first one. I am, however, going to put it against the second Memphis conference win. I am going to put it ahead of the Gasparilla over Florida, right? So that's still significant ground.
Yeah. I think that's good company. That's good company, honestly.
And if I were better educated in the stickball, I would definitely give that regional that Elo cited its due and to at least be around it. But again, I answered that question with one caveat, since my compatriots got tons of them, with one caveat. I reserve the right to acknowledge and get time to see the impact that it has, because I have that for these other
Well, that's a great point. This game
I
can
agree
still
with you on
evolve. This could still evolve. What if Kansas goes on and wins the national title? What if this?
Oh my God! Yeah, that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
What if this is the beginning of UCF having an incredible year in the Big 12 that we didn't expect? Or there's a lot of interesting plot twists to this.
Or this could just be like Oklahoma State in football and just be like a great little memory from all right.
Yeah. Either way, at minimum, it'll be one of the greatest memories ever.
I don't want to go in how you're kind of dismissing. Well, that's another question.
Save it for the Benny Show. Let's go. We got to go. We spent a lot of time on that, so I do want to touch on BYU real quick because this is a big game Saturday. BYU's ranked. Well, it's a big game for. It's a big game for. I mean, welcome to life in the Big 12 in basketball. Every game's a big game, but this is big for both sides because I think both sides would agree if you kind of had a truth serum to both sides. I think UCF circled this BYU game as, hey, we got to win this game. It's a home game that we got to win considering some of the opponents that we have. And then if you're BYU going in, you're thinking this is probably our best chance to win a road game in the Big 12. BYU is reeling. They're 0-2 in the Big 12, lost at home to Cincinnati, lost on the road to Baylor. They could be staring 0-3 off the bat. They're the best three-point shooting team in the country. They make about 12 threes a game. That's going to be the key. How does UCF slow down BYU's deep perimeter defense? BYU has struggled a little bit in the first two Big 12 games. That makes a ton of sense. How does UCF respond from the Kansas game? Is there a hangover, a letdown? What is the crowd going to be like? Nick, you've mentioned you think you saw where it's close to a sellout, or you think it's going to be a good crowd. But I think this is a big game to see. UCF's got a chance to go 2-1. BYU trying to avoid 0-3. It's a good game Saturday at 4.
Oh, yeah.
BYU, by the way, ranked number 4 in the net, and we're looking at the net rankings right now. UCF is at 76 after going up only 2 spots after beating Kansas. Really?
I mean, I guess that's what happens when other big clubs, because Houston lost, for example.
Every big team lost. Like, yeah.
I don't get too. My advice is somebody who does bracketology stuff. Don't get caught up in the net now. I would wait a few more weeks.
It's January.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, hopefully more people come out there with UCF BYU 4.
Yeah, please keep coming out because I want more fun games like that.
UCF is probably going to make their case for a top 25 spot. I think.
No. You
don't think so?
They got blown out by Kansas State a week ago.
Bryson, I'm going to tell you what Darius Johnson told us in the postgame. We're a one game at a time team.
Thank you.
We're focusing on 1-0.
And you literally need to do that.
One game at a time.
You literally need to do that in the Big 12. You know who's in the top 25 though? UCF women's basketball's next opponent on Saturday, West Virginia. That's called the segue.
Take me home.
UCF women's basketball back home. Many of you probably are not aware of this because this occurred during the UCF Kansas game. But women's basketball took a heartbreaking loss to Cincinnati on Wednesday at the same time as UCF was playing Kansas. So they are still winless in the Big 12. They lost to Kansas State at home, which you were at, Kyle. No, was it you or Bryson? I forget which one.
Kansas State. I was at Oklahoma State, sir.
All right, so you both were in it. So I'm going to defer to both of you here. Because Bryson said, I've got a bone to pick with Kyle about women's hoops about something. Because he was feisty about what's something. I don't know what it is. So
Bryson's in the building. Here we go.
All right, Bryson, let's go. What do you got?
Okay. So keep in mind, by the way, that I was in the student section watching the Kansas game while this was going on. And I'm looking at my phone because I'm on Twitter because I'm live tweeting the game. And I'm seeing the updates from Cincinnati. And all I keep seeing is KP, Caitlin Peterson, KP, Caitlin Peterson, KP. I go look at the stat sheet after the game because I wasn't able to, because Twitter was like the only app that I was able to use with any like consistency. And I see that Caitlin Peterson scored 35 points against Cincinnati, a new career high for her and she scored over half of UCF's 63 points, which they lost by 1 after Cincinnati got a putback layup right before the clock hit 0. So KP almost single-handedly, pretty much as single-handedly as you can get in basketball. And I think as single-handedly as you can get, almost won that game. She took that. Someone needs to get her to a chiropractor because she put that entire team on her back. and almost got him a win in Ohio, and then it got lost the last second on a putback layup. I say all this to say that that Caitlin Peterson cannot do this alone. I remember Layla Jewett said it after the last game, in the press conference after the game before this one. But I think if that game didn't prove it, this one certainly did, because Caitlin Peterson is a special player, and I really just. It's unfortunate that you have games like this where she puts on an absolute clinic of a performance to have it lose like that.
And you have a bone to pick with me because Caitlin Peterson's good at basketball.
Hey, Eric, no, I said that feisty Bryson was going to come out. I didn't say it was directed to Kyle.
Oh,
now he's backing down. Now he's backing down. Oh, boo!
No, look.
Woo! To see my blood, right?
I said all. I don't know. Look, Eric, you're the one that was putting words in my mouth here. I was like, wait, what, like Kyle?
All right, how about this? I'll pick a fight with both of you.
Okay.
Where's the first win coming? Because I remember we said this last week. This Cincinnati game I thought was big to try to get that first win. Otherwise, I don't think they win. They may not get a win until February, until softball season starts. So tell me why I'm wrong on this. Give me some optimism here from the women's side.
Well, I mean, first off, listen. To Satia Messer's credit, Coach Messer has acknowledged that it's still a product, and honestly, for my money, I think the opportunity to get a win that would satisfy a skeptical fan as yourself, Eric Lopez, was Oklahoma State. I think they completely let that one get away. That's just my take. They competed rebounding, and all this, by the way, with Nate Hutton, for all intents and purposes, just flat out done for the year. Bryson, I'll hand you the ball here in a minute. I think you and I don't remember if it was on the show or not, but I think you and I, Elo, had mentioned perhaps on a previous episode of the Night Shift podcast, that Cincy game might be their last chance to do a lot, because after West Virginia here coming up, then there's Baylor. Good God. Then there's TCU. Oh, geez. I mean, we're looking at the space game coming up against Houston. I don't think that's a lollipop game. I mean, you say February, Elo, where they host the mighty Iowa State out of Ames there. For my money, I think that might be the best shot at the first win coming.
The way that I'm looking at these right now, because looking at this game, since UCF was almost able to get this win against Cincinnati on the road, by the way, so Cincinnati coming here should be interesting to watch as well. But I mean, coming into this one, this is a West Virginia team that's on the edge of the top 25, and you know what? I mean, I wonder if maybe this could be interesting, because this will technically be the first basketball game, the first event in Edition Arena to happen since that Kansas game. And remember, we all were saying we didn't think UCF men's basketball was going to win this Kansas game. So who's to say that women's basketball can't just shock us for whatever reason and pull one out at home against one of these ranked Big 12 teams? Because Caitlin Peterson and Ashola Cott, I honestly think, are among the class of the Big 12 in their respective categories, as from a scoring perspective, from KP, and then a rebounding perspective for a Cott. And I think if they have the supporting cast done right, just like with the men's team, when Jalen Sellers and Darius Johnson and Ibrahima Diallo all were on, they ended up winning. And so I think that if KP and Akot do what they've been doing this entire year, and then you have a Maya Burns and Maya Burns and others, also have with them, you can do that kind of thing and beat a top 25 team. Maybe not Baylor, but I think a West Virginia or a TC, a West Virginia at home, and at home, I think being the caveat there.
I mean, listen, I'm never going to question this team's heart. Caitlin Peterson, I believe I said it on the last Night Shift podcast that she is full honey badger. The closest thing I've seen to the kind of spirit she has attacking the lane is Diamond Battles, and I'm not saying she's as good a player, but she has that same kind of determination. In the words of the great Diamond Battles, locked in was a state of being, right? So I'll definitely give Caitlin Peterson that kind of credit. However, listen, logistics, physics, time, and space are a thing, and it makes it difficult. You put together the circumstances in which an upset would happen. KP has an amazing night, as she proves. She'll just have quarters where she decides to light it up. I mentioned that after Oklahoma State, and she just smiled humbly as she could, acknowledging, that's nice of you to say. I know it's true. I just can't say it because it's a press conference. But, if you have a night where H. Lacotte can keep out of damn foul trouble for 30 seconds, the problem with youth is just trying to keep control with tempo when you're trying to be a Tasmanian devil. Think Ithiel Horton, for an example, on the men's side from last year, right? It's very easy to get into foul trouble, and that's been a struggle for her, much to the chagrin of the women's team. If you could get nights where Maya Burns lights it up and is the oversized guard, think another comparison from men's basketball last year, a CJ Kelly, who could score and get rebounds and run the point when necessary. If Layla Jewett gets hot behind the arc, as she's known to do on occasion, that is the recipe for an upset.
A lot of ifs there. That was a lot of ifs.
Yeah, but I was just going to say, Elo, for those planets to align, I think you worded it fine. That's a lot of ifs, buddy.
For the record, by the way, in this last game where they only lost by 1 point, Caitlin Peterson was on the court for the full 40 minutes. I just looked at the stat sheet. Like,
another thing she holds in common with Diamond Battles. Expect to see that a lot.
Yeah, noon tip, UCF West Virginia. It's kind of a unique day on campus. The Hula Bowl will be going on at the same time at the Bounce House as the women's basketball game at noon. The men's game's at 4. Do you guys like doubleheaders? Do you like these men's doubleheaders, the way they do these from time to time, or yay or nay?
I'd like it if the Hula Bowl wasn't going on at the same time as one.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, you, as someone who is a completionist, I absolutely where I cannot be at two places. I wish I could be at two places at once for moments like that, because there's just going to be that little thing eating at me, like, hey, what's going on?
I'm glad you weren't. I would never get to cover a damn game.
No. So to answer your question, Eric, you know what? Every now and then it's fine. Like, I thought it was cool when they did it for like opening up night of both teams, and I think it's cool to do it every now and then, but. Really wish they weren't doing it this weekend. Let's just put it like that.
Well, that's the timing, though. I think that now here's the thing: is I wonder if
NFL Saturday, man, there's playoff games going on. I want to watch the playoffs.
What if they have the order wrong? Think about this, because the women's basketball game is coming before the men's game. So what I was interested in thinking about is, do you think that maybe you switch it and have people stick around after the men's game for the women's game, or do you think it's better to have the women's game as a preamble to the men's one?
I'm not the person to ask about that.
Yeah, I think
that's for the athletic department to decide, not me.
Yeah,
I'm with Elo. The lead in with the women is better.
Okay.
You got a better – well, because here's an example. I know for a fact there will be people – heck, it could be me. I am a game-time decision that might go to catch some of the women's game on their way to go to the men's game. People aren't going to do the opposite, right? They're not going to stick – I think there are people that will go there and catch some of the women's game and then maybe go eat at Burger U or whatever and go to the men's game. That might be something I might do. With some buddies and stuff like that, versus, hey, I'm going to go to the men's game and stick around longer for the women's game. I don't think that would work at all, especially as Nick mentioned with the NFL playoffs, wild card series starting with my beloved Miami Dolphins playing their final game of the season and freaking minus 20 degrees.
So it won't be a conflict for me.
That's true. Well, do you guys have been
saying it, man? We feel bad for you. Like, I'm sorry.
Negative 20 degrees.
That's about Peacock, not about me missing the thing.
That. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, you know what? If we want to get upset about that, I'm actually with you on that one.
Oh, welcome back to the jungle, Chief. Anyway.
Okay. So anyway,
I was at the Kansas game till like 3 a.m. Okay, my mind's not working well today.
All right. Well, then let's wrap up the show then for everybody here. We're going to have coverage of both the men's and the women's basketball games on Saturday. That'll be all on blackandgoldbanneret.com. And Mr. Bryson Turner is going to be covering more stuff on blackandgoldbanneret.com, which are...
Now we are starting to really get into spring proper because the track and field season will be kickstarted. Renaya Jones, it could end up being back in action. It depends on if she participates in the but anyway, Dana Boone and the track team will be back. It's debuting in the Big 12 with Big 12. I will have my preview of the team up as soon as I can get that up. But I've been working on that over the course of this break, and then over the course of the coming week or so, as the tennis teams get started, and then later this month when the golf teams get started, you'll see previews for these teams appear up on the blackandgoldbanneret.com as they get started. It's all going to start with Dana Boone and the track and field program, who start their indoor season on Friday with the Jimmy Carnes Invitational in Gainesville and the Rob McCravey Memorial Invite in Louisville, Kentucky. And also, the cheer and dance team is going to be competing in Disney for their national championship. This is their one chance to compete, Eric Lopez, this weekend at the ESPN Wide World of Sports. So we'll see if Coach Linda Gooch can add another national championship squad that can be up for UCF Athletics Hall of Fame induction in like 7 years or 10 years.
Busy weekend. Kyle, what do you got?
Man, listen, it's gonna be pandemonium as I try to recover from kitchen remodeling in my house, getting the NFL right. But
Nick told me he was going to try to negotiate with you to get you back out to some hoops here.
Come back, man. We miss you. Everyone misses you.
Miss me? That's your house now. Like, listen, I mean, Elo's the one that done muscled me out here, getting all the Big 12 games going. What's up?
Can we, by the way, I want to publicly, give Nick some flowers now because
we're not doing this.
No, you're covering the Big 12, dude. That is awesome.
Just another day at the office. I don't know what you're talking about.
Look at this humility.
This man.
See, I don't know what's going to take, but I'm looking just as much as I look forward to feisty Bryson. I look for the day where I see cocky Nick. That'll be fun. But yeah, listen, this weekend I got a lot going on. Covering NFL action, of course. Look out, by the way, as an aside, I'll be talking on the Student of the Game podcast here, something we may go over later here on Night Shift as well, with a lot of movement in the Big 12 and the world here. You know, not just moving the Big 12. Obviously, a lot of teams have arrived, but you know, Eric's ACC in an interesting state. Goodness only knows what that'll bring in the future. So.
I just want to know, are the Dolphins ever going to win a playoff game in my lifetime, Kyle? That's all I want to know.
Have some faith, man. My God.
Here's the thing. I won't say this year, but listen, all Mike McDaniel has to do is to get 2 more defensive guys other than Christian Wilkins to produce. And hey, maybe not get most of your defensive contributors hurt.
You think? You think that's a good idea? Yeah, thank you. All right, thank you. Nick will be covering basketball Saturday as well. Men's hoops. I don't know why he's wearing BYU colors, but I'm sure it'll change by
just
Saturday.
Worked out. I wanted, get a shirt covered in BYU colors dirty because who cares?
Oh, I thought it was motivation. Got to be BYU. You know.
That's a great point. All right. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Night Shift. Check us out, blackandgoldbanneret.com. Check us out on the YouTube channel where you can listen to this separate podcast as well as all your podcast feeds once it gets uploaded. Jeff will have his voice by Saturday. He'll be doing PA for the game against BYU. Nick will be there. Bryson may be there. Kyle will be somewhere watching something. I will be somewhere watching. Hope you've enjoyed this edition of Night Shift. Until next time, Kyle, what's the famous words?
An honor, joy, and privilege, my friends, but class dismissed.